So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are so glad you're joining us because today we are getting into something that, well, you've probably seen absolutely everywhere lately.
Yeah, I mean, it is unavoidable right now.
Completely unavoidable. We are talking about Bridgerton Season 4, specifically the central couple, Benedict Bridgerton and Sophie Baek.
It's just a massive cultural phenomenon at this point.
Right. And our mission today for you is to really unpack this. We're looking at the source material to figure out why this classic centuries-old Cinderella trope still has modern audiences in, like an absolute chokehold.
Because it really is the classic formula, isn't it?
Exactly. You take a magical evening, a dash of secret identity, a lost item, and boom, happily ever after. It's comforting, it's clean. We know exactly where it's going to land.
Well, we think we know.
Right. But here's the hook for today. What happens when the prince realizes that finding the girl doesn't actually mean a simple happily ever after? What if it means like total social and financial ruin?
And that is exactly where the story gets genuinely interesting. Because the fantasy of the prince sweeping the commoner off her feet, it usually ends right before the real-world consequences begin.
We never stick around for the part where the kingdom turns against them.
Exactly. We never see that. And with Benedict, we're dealing with a man who basically built his entire life on avoiding societal rules. So how does he react when he falls for a woman that society absolutely forbids him from having?
It's a massive tonal shift for the series. And to really understand why these two are dominating TikTok and Instagram right now, we have to start with that foundational myth.
The Cinderella trope.
Yes, and specifically the magic of the masquerade ball.
Right, the masquerade is the entire narrative catalyst here. It's one of the oldest narrative devices we have, but it never seems to lose its potency.
I was trying to make sense of this for a modern context, and I thought, okay, a masquerade ball is kind of like the Regency era equivalent of internet anonymity.
Oh, that's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, because it's a space where the usual rules are just suspended. You don't have your title floating above your head. You don't have your family's bank account pinned to your lapel. You're just a person behind a mask interacting with another person behind a mask.
It is a close comparison, but I'd argue a masquerade is actually much higher stakes than internet anonymity.
Wait, really? How so?
Well, think about it. When you are anonymous online, you are hidden behind a screen. You're usually miles away from the other person. But at a Regency masquerade, they are separated by miles. They are physically in the same room.
Breathing the same air, dancing.
Exactly. Dancing, touching. The masquerade acts as this incredibly rare, localized vacuum in a heavily stratified society. In a world where everyone is, intensely aware of who outranks whom, the mask temporarily pauses that entire hierarchy.
They get to interact purely as equals.
Right, but with the palpable physical danger that they could be discovered at literally any second.
Okay, yeah, that physical proximity definitely ramps up the tension. But honestly, the Cinderella trope itself it's incredibly repetitive.
Oh, totally.
We have seen the hidden identity, the ball, the midnight escape a million times in a million different formats. So why does a trope this old still manage to hook us so deeply?
Well, if we peel back the layers, the Cinderella trope isn't really about the magical evening.
It's not about the fancy clothes.
Not at all. It's not the clothes, it's not the pumpkin carriage. It is fundamentally about the psychological tension of being truly seen while paradoxically remaining hidden.
Oh, wow. Okay, unpack that a bit.
When you wear a mask, you are offered a temporary escape from the rigid structures of your daily life. For a brief moment, you aren't your job or your social standing or your family's heavy expectations.
Like just your raw, unfiltered self.
Exactly that. We all crave that kind of absolute freedom. The vulnerability of being known without the labels is a universal human desire.
So it's the fantasy that someone could fall in love with your purest essence, completely divorced from all your worldly baggage.
Precisely. But the narrative engine of this trope, the reason it works, relies on the fact that this vacuum is temporary.
The clock always strikes midnight.
The ball ends, and the mask has to come off.
And when it does, that romantic idealism they built in secret violently collides with the harsh societal structures waiting for them outside the ballroom.
It's a brutal wake-up call.
And I want to pause right here because here's where it gets really interesting to me. We usually frame these fairy tale stories as dreamy romances, but the source material explicitly describes the reality of their cross-class romance as brutal.
Brutal reality, yes.
Not challenging, not complicated, brutal. So walk me through that. How does that brutality actually manifest when the dreamy masquerade gives way to the unforgiving daylight?
To understand that brutality, you have to look at the mechanics of the era they are living in. Regency society operates on unforgiving systemic rules.
Right.
The tension between Benedict and Sophie isn't merely a question of chemistry or whether their personalities clash. The brutality comes from the very real systemic consequences of breaking class boundaries.
Society essentially functions as an active antagonist.
Exactly. Because he is falling for a woman society says he cannot have. It is just a polite suggestion to stay within his class. It is a structural wall.
And hitting that wall causes immense damage.
Yes, the brutality is economic, it's social, and it's reputational. If a man of Benedict's standing crosses that massive class divide, he risks utter ruin.
And ruin back then didn't just mean people gossiping behind your back at a party.
No, not at all. It meant the loss of credit, the loss of standing, the total ostracization of his entire family.
Like his sisters could be ruined in the marriage market.
His family name disgraced. The stakes are no longer just emotional at that point, they are existential.
Wow.
The magic of the masquerade was the easy part. Surviving the daylight, where every single person they know is actively enforcing these rigid class structures, that is what grounds this fairy tale in high-stakes reality.
Okay, that makes the stakes incredibly clear. It's sort of like, think of it like playing a video game on God mode.
God mode.
Yeah. You know, you take no damage, so you just run around doing whatever you want, totally ignoring the rules of the game. For years, Benedict has been known as the ultimate carefree bachelor.
That's true.
He's basically been playing life on God mode. He's enjoyed all the privileges of his high rank without taking on any of the heavy structural responsibilities.
That is a very apt way to look at his character up to this point. A carefree bachelor, in his position, uses his charm and his status to just glide over the surface of society.
He observes the rules, but he doesn't really let them touch him.
Right, but then he falls for Sophie, and suddenly the cheat codes are turned off.
Yeah. Every social rule he used to ignore can actually hurt him now. He can't passively exist in the background anymore.
He's forced to face the system head on. This brutal reality acts as a crucible. It forces him to transform from an avoider into a pursuer.
Because when you're gliding over the surface, you don't have to confront the machinery underneath.
Exactly. But this relationship drags him right into the gears of that societal machine.
Yeah.
He can't just charm his way out of this brutal reality.
Which leads to the most significant shift in his character, right? The source points out that he trades typical, grand, performative speeches for raw vulnerability.
Yes, this season is the most emotionally expressive we've seen.
Wait, I need you to walk me through that. Because if he stops being charming and he stops giving these grand, sweeping speeches, doesn't that make him a worse romantic lead?
Why would you say that?
Well, we watch period dramas specifically for those sweeping declarations of love in the rain, you know. Why would stripping away the polished romance make his character arc more effective?
Okay. Let's reframe how we think about those grand speeches.
Yeah.
A carefree bachelor uses avoidance as a shield, certainly. But humor, charm, and even those grand, sweeping romantic speeches, those are also shields.
A romantic speech is a shield. I'm not sure I buy that.
Think about it from a psychological perspective. A grand speech is rehearsed. It's polished. It's highly performative.
Yep.
When a character delivers a beautifully constructed monologue, they remain entirely in control of the narrative and the emotion. It's a way of saying, look at how beautifully I can express my feelings without actually having to endure the messy, terrifying, uncontrollable reality of those feelings.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Right. By trading those grand speeches for raw vulnerability, scammering, silence, desperate actions, Benedict is finally dropping his emotional armor.
So the lack of polish is actually the point. The polish was the problem all along.
Precisely. His newfound vulnerability finally matches the brutal honesty of the cross-class reality they are facing.
Because you can't fight a brutal systemic societal mandate with a flowery poem.
You absolutely cannot. You have to fight it with raw, unshielded truth. He has to risk everything, including his ego and his composure, to be with a woman society says he can't have.
And dropping that emotional armor isn't just a win for his character growth. It's actually the exact reason this 19th century romance is currently hijacking 21st century algorithms.
Oh, the digital dominance is fascinating.
Right. This pivot toward raw vulnerability has caused the series to completely transcend traditional television viewing. They are a massive cultural phenomenon, like absolutely dominating TikTok and Instagram.
The contrast is striking, isn't it?
Totally.
You have an elaborate, slow burn period piece set in an era defined by incredibly rigid societal rules, lengthy courtships, repressed emotions.
And yet, it is absolutely thriving in the visceral, rapid-fire medium of short-form video.
Exactly.
If you are listening and you're scrolling on your phone right now, you know exactly what we're talking about. But I really want to dig into the specific anatomy of these viral clips based on what the source material highlights.
Let's do it.
Because it's not people sharing long dialogue scenes. The fandom pulse right now is entirely focused on these hyper-specific micro moments. It's the hand-touching scenes set to dramatic orchestral pop tracks.
Yes, the hand touches.
Why are zoomed-in shots of hands grazing suddenly the most viral thing on the internet?
It comes down to what short-form algorithms and, honestly, human psychology actually index for.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Platforms like TikTok reward visual authenticity and intense emotional resonance that can be understood in a fraction of a second. Viewers aren't clipping lengthy, dry monologues about Regency's societal structure.
Because that requires way too much context.
Exactly. But a trembling hand, a desperate gaze, that is universal visual agony.
You don't need to know the historical context to feel the tension of an ungloved hand touching a cheek.
You really don't. When Benedict drops his armor, that raw exposure is instantly recognizable. And the orchestral pop tracks driving these viral videos act as a modern emotional translator.
A modern emotional translator, I like that.
Yeah, because you pair a modern swelling pop anthem with the repressed tactile longing of the 19th century, and it creates this perfect storm of tension. The strict, buttered-up aesthetic of the era literally collides with messy, uncontrollable human emotion.
It's the ultimate contrast. You can consume the entire emotional arc of their forbidding cross-class romance, the longing, the societal barrier, the desperation, in a 15-second clip of them just looking at each other.
And it hits you right in the chest.
It really does. And it proves a fascinating point about storytelling.
Which is?
The core components of the Cinderella trope. You know, the deep longing to be seen for who you truly are, the immovable barrier of social class, and the desperate leap of faith required to cross that barrier. Those are timeless.
It's absolutely timeless.
They don't just survive in the modern digital age, they thrive in it. But they only thrive if they are delivered with genuine emotional honesty rather than performative fluff.
Which is exactly what this season stripped away.
So if we look at the big picture here, understanding this phenomenon is about so much more than figuring out why a specific television couple is popular for you to watch.
It's about seeing how ancient narrative blueprints survive by shedding their armor.
Exactly. We started today with the magic of the masquerade ball, where the fantasy of being known without labels creates a perfect, albeit temporary, equalizer. But it's the collision with the brutal, unforgiving daylight of Regency class structures that actually gives the story its power. Benedict had to turn off his God mode cheat codes.
He had to drop the polished romantic speeches.
Yes, and embrace raw vulnerability to face a systemic wall he just couldn't charm his way over. And that visceral, unshielded emotion is exactly what translates so perfectly into the viral, hand-touching, orchestral, pop-infused dominance of today's digital algorithms.
It really highlights how stories evolve. But, looking at Benedict's massive transformation from an isolated, carefree avoider gliding over the surface of life into a vulnerable pursuer who finally engages with the messy reality of the world, it leaves us with a rather provocative question to consider.
Oh, what's that?
Well, the Cinderella trope is fundamentally a story about someone being rescued from their restrictive, oppressive circumstances.
Right.
But considering how profoundly this relationship forces Benedict to drop his shields and finally experience real life, does this suggest that he was actually the one who needed rescuing all along?
Wow. Now that is a thought for you to linger on. It turns out, sometimes the person living without any rules is the one who is the most trapped.